Welcome to the Air Power Airwaves, the Air Power Manufacturing Solutions podcast series where we talk about manufacturing issues that impact you. Hey, it's Travis. Welcome to another edition of Air Power Airwaves, and this one is actually a continuation of the previous podcast that we shot with this gentleman over here, Mr. Allan Mustard. By the way, something just hit me. Did you ever get called Colonel Mustard?
Well, I have, and I know all of the mustard jokes. I'm pretty sure I even make them myself. I actually prefer Captain Condiment because the Colonel is taken. So,
Captain Condiment, I like it.
Captain.
Can we please put a caption under him right now that says Captain Condiment? And how about some funny sounds to go with it? Here we go, Jai. Get your fingers ready. Hold on. Introducing Captain Condiment. We're going to see how that one turns out. All right. Again, I'm Travis Steerwalt with Air Power Manufacturing Solutions. I am an application specialist with Air Power, but I'm also the host of Air Power Airwaves. So, we just wrapped up the first one, which was about we're talking about trends in the wood finishing industry and the wood finishing itself. And we talked about substrates, we talked about coatings technologies and how they're evolving, how they're changing. And as we move into our next one, I want you to be aware that you can, if you're seeing this or hearing this, there was a part one. This is part two. So the part two, we're actually going to get into things like process times, color palettes, and custom colors. We're going to talk about the impact that COVID and evolving manufacturing have taken in this market. So if you have any questions, 1-800-334-1001. You can find all of these videos at airpowerlive.com. If you need to find backup episodes or the previous episode of this podcast or all Airwaves podcasts, you can find them at airpowerairwaves.com. Find us on all platforms of social media, and everything goes on our YouTube channel. So Air Power Manufacturing Solutions on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe and start liking and sharing all the videos and watching. So, the guys I have with me are Allan Mustard with Carlisle Fluid Technologies, account manager, 4 states. It'll encompass Air Power for sure. And Len Morrison. How you doing, Len?
Doing good, sir.
Good. Len's a good friend of mine. Len and I have been working together for quite a number of years, and he's an account manager for Air Power in Western North Carolina.
Correct.
Okay. All right, guys, let's talk about this. Let's get into process times. COVID dealt us all a really weird hand, and I think some of this had started prior to that, but it just drove a lot of that technology. You know, COVID drove a lot of technology and a lot of change. Some due to lack of workers, present in the workplace. Some due to lack of raw materials. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? I know you're probably ready to shift gear and roll with this one.
Well, the process time was a requirement in the market change where people, because of COVID, sat and stared at the house and they looked at it and they're like, we can't stay here unless we change this and upgrade this and have this storage solution. They started looking for things and they didn't want to wait for it.
Right.
So manufacturing had to find a way to satisfy what I will call the Amazon culture that has evolved as a result. They'd like for it to ship to their house. They don't necessarily need to go out there and look for it, but they need it at their house in 2 days. So that process time, the cycle from the purchase to the delivery needed to be much closer than it ever has before.
Yep.
And, offshore manufacturing was shipping containers full of product that North America had to compete with a cycle time, a process time that would deliver the product to the customer's door in the same time frame.
So
That's very difficult.
You guys break this down for us, for the listeners. So, old school manufacturing was, all right, we're going to manufacture. Let's pick a product like cabinets, for kitchen cabinets. Okay, so kitchen cabinets that are the cookie cutter variety that go into a specific, model home or whatever.
Yep.
And they all kind of fit. You can mix, match, or move it around, whatever. But old school was they would make a bunch of these, and they would make them in what, like 5, 6 colors?
Right.
And they would stockpile in a warehouse.
Yep.
And then a customer goes shopping, whether it be at a store or a designer is showing them what they offer, whatever. And the designer goes, you have these types of cabinets, and here's your color palette of 5, 6, 7 colors.
Typically limited on the species of wood, and then very
Right.
small
Like
selection of color.
It's made, here you go.
And
Just choose your color.
If it was high-end custom cabinetry, it was in 3-inch increments on the height and the width of the
Okay.
cabinets, so that a designer or a builder could quickly fit it into a kitchen.
Yep.
So that was kind of cookie cutter still.
Yep.
They were
So,
limited in their options.
So that one cabinet, like let's call it the island cabinet that comes out, past your sink and cuts out into the middle of the room, middle of the kitchen. That one would have to be made in multiple lengths
Yep,
on
in
3-inch
increments.
So all of these different sizes would have to be made and in stock,
Absolutely.
and in 7 different colors.
Yes.
So you have monster warehouses full of basically one product, multiple size, multiple colors.
In the past, yes.
Yes.
Because you had stock colors and less available door styles, different
Yep.
profiles to sell. Kitchen cabinetry had not evolved to the level of complexity of product that they have now.
So, what drove the change to where we are now, and where are we now?
The remodel industry boomed, starting in really in the early 2000s with the housing industry boom that eventually did
Yep.
collapse in '08. That started the trend, established the remodel industry trend as a real driving force for homes to be a center of entertainment and a reflection of the character of the owner of the home. So that really drove it in a lot of ways.
Okay. So where are we today? We, obviously, and I'm not ashamed to say this, prior to COVID, I had never used Amazon. My wife and I
Wow.
just had never used it really prior to COVID. And I think maybe we'd ordered a couple things off it. I had Amazon Prime because I wanted the Amazon,
Yeah, I have an
network.
Amazon problem. I'm
fully addicted now. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
We've talked about Cleveland, and the food thing, right? I'm the kind of guy you call the condiment thing, right?
Yep.
My wife calls me the condiment king because our fridge, 2 doors are lined top to bottom with different hot sauces
Beautiful.
and stuff. And
Exactly.
so I'm watching one of my favorite YouTube channels that I watch, and I know it's ridiculous, is called Outdoor Boys. And it's a dad and his 3 sons and his wife.
Oh, yeah.
And at any given time, they go camping. Alaska, 10 feet of snow, builds a snow cave, goes in and camps, right? Well, they go on a trip to Hawaii. This is culture these days, right? They're on a trip to Hawaii. I happen to love guava. They sit down at this little restaurant, and boom, they have guava butter. I'm like, that guava butter looks really good.
Yeah.
30 seconds later, I had it on the
got
way to
some.
my house. Yep, I just ordered that. It's going to be Amazon Prime delivered straight from Hawaii. Like, I'm okay with that.
So
So-
to satisfy those crazy needs
Yes.
that we all have, in the kitchen cabinet industry, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Europe, the kitchen cabinet is frameless, and that does a couple things. It makes it more modular, so it saves space. The face frame doesn't take up any of the storage space, the space that's available in a kitchen design, but also it by design is fully disassemblable. I don't know if that's a word. Fully disassemblable.
Yeah.
That's a lot of syllables.
A la
Anyway,
carte.
okay, so when you move from one house to another, one flat to another in Europe, you take your kitchen cabinets. They're your property. They're your furniture.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they disassemble and reassemble them at the next place they move to. So the knockdown or ready to assemble furniture movement actually started there in Europe, and we brought it over here. The IKEA model, the KD, the
Yeah.
knockdown kitchen cabinets were a result of that. It's easier to ship, it's faster to produce.
Yep.
So it helps both worlds, the manufacturing world and the end user can take advantage of those different ways of making things and the way you assemble it. So we needed to be able to produce faster anyway. We had a process time challenge. So if we do it in knockdown or ready to assemble form, we can stack it and pack it much faster. But we have to find coatings and a process that supports that as a result.
Moving is hard enough than to think about tearing
Moving
down
your
my
kitchen.
cabinets. I don't ever want to sign up for that. Sorry. Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
So, well, we just covered process time really, really well. So,
It's got to be able to stack and
Yeah.
pack really easily.
so in order to do that, I want to go into that color palette. We talk about just-in-time manufacturing. We've been talking about that since the 90s. I think first time I heard that term, I got into the industry in 96. And it wasn't long after that I started to hear the JIT movement, And I was involved with powder coaters primarily and then liquid painters at the time. But it was becoming much more desirable to be able to color change rapidly, which is something that, powder coating has really come a long way to be able to do that quickly. Because, the color change times, historically were horrible, the amount of time that it took on a production scale, not on like a batch scale, right?
Right.
But historically there were issues time-wise. And in liquid, you have a lot of the same issues on the liquid side, and it's JIT then to what JIT now is a big different story. Either of you guys want to touch on JIT and the liquid side?
You want to turn?
Go for it.
Okay. When I really became involved with some automation for color changes in the past, in kitchen cabinets and in furniture, you put a hand spray gun down and you picked another one up. And there was a pump or a pressure pot that had that color in it. It was dedicated equipment, but there were several of them by you that you chose from. And with automation, when we started to need to color change, it took longer because there were several spray guns possibly. The
Okay.
circuit was bigger. It took longer. So a 5-minute color change was really fast at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
We now color change in 10 seconds. That's a requirement. It's not an option. It's a requirement. And a lot of the chemistries involved are 2K. So there's a hardener that's mixed in with that material, and that material can set up and build up in all of the valves
Has to
and
be
all of the
flushed out.
fittings in the hoses. So you've got to powerfully flush it in seconds.
So walk us through a typical. I don't know how you want to take this, a 2K or a 3K, and you've got your gun that the hose is going to. Let's say it's going to 2 guns.
Right?
Okay. What's the actual physical process of doing that quick of a change out. How is that 2K set up, and how are the guns set up to do that so quickly?
Right. What we have found is that a high velocity flow rate of the cleaning solvent or diluent, whether it's water or whether it's a thinner of some kind, could be used. High velocity intermixed with air pockets. We call it an air solvent scrub. That works really well at lower pressures. At higher pressures, we can't use air. The measuring equipment, the metering equipment doesn't like the air in there, so we're not able to use it. In higher pressures, compress those air bubbles so they are less effective anyway. So it doesn't really help as much, but we, through an opening and closing of different valves at different locations, can flush the supply line to the application equipment and send it to a waste container of some kind, and not spend time spraying it through the applicator to do the change. So you go through a valving manifold system, if you will. There's some way, whether it's a manual spray or whether it's an automatic spray where we use an automatic gun and it's mounted to a manifold that has air and fluid inlets and outlets on it. That helps you speed up the change significantly. That's always a recommendation of ours, is that you use a valving system that automates the process and makes it optimal, because the human element of that process could take some shortcuts and not realize it's not completely flushed or completely loaded, completely cleaned in between those things. We try and automate that, provide a solution that's more robust, and in some cases have a holster. We call it a gun flush box for manual spray. We'll insert a gun and close the lid, and it completely safely manages that change with a system that automatically flushes and loads the next color. So.
And we don't want you spraying all that just directly into a filter wall. It's kind of illegal. Kind of, you just, when you're dumping it straight into the wall of the filters, we see it all the time still.
It's very wasteful. It's just not an efficient way to do it.
Nope.
The restriction of the application tool is a flow rate restriction that's not conducive to a clean flush and a fast load and efficiency thing.
So, you want to cover anything else on that particular?
Well, what that 10-second flush time and load of new color does for your process, you can go from a gray material or gray color to a white to a black and not have any interruptions in the feed line into the if it's an automatic line to a flat line
and
system.
this is with a single gun. This is not with
correct
dedicated guns to each color. Like that's a typical thing you see in a lot of wood environments.
Yeah, in the past, for sure.
You'd have 8 guns lined up for 8 colors, and then another booth that had multiple different lacquers or varnish lacquers or sealers.
I would say that in the past, color changes were 4 times a shift. Very, very large runs of the same colors were run in production. And now, if they do 80 color changes in a day, in a shift, then they're actually on the low end.
And that was a note that we wrote down here, color palette, the spoiled environment. Like, I want what I want it right now.
Yep.
I want guava butter.
Right. Want your guava butter.
How fast can it get here? That environment has really driven it, and it's driven the way that our entire manufacturing platform is running. Some of that's awesome. Some it's a real pain until you get it under control.
There's the challenge of the color palette in size of the order as well as the number of colors available.
Yep.
So are you spraying 1 piece or 300? You have to be able to supply the coating regardless and not waste a lot
Yep.
at the same time, because you need it in 30 minutes for another order.
But what has been the impact? This goes right along with it. What has been the impact of the brand consolidation? You know,
Right.
that we saw this back. You just mentioned '08. We saw it between '04, '05, '08, '09. We saw consolidations then, and then things were pretty level for a while. But COVID, post COVID, there's been a lot of consolidation.
Right? Uh, Kitchen cabinet manufacturers have consolidated in huge scales, and some of the cabinet brands are still a remaining part of a designer's offering for home builders and for big designers. That's critical that they actually still have those color statement pieces in their brand identity. So those colors from competitive in the past brands are all under the same production model running together. So they're running somebody else's light oak and somebody else's light oak, but they're different colors now. They're not the same, and they have to maintain those colors.
Yep.
That's not only affected the stains, but the paints as well. There's a lot of different shades of gray, if you will.
You have to be careful because some people use very similar names that are meant to they're meant to trip you up. That you're
They
going to
are.
be okay with this or this, and you get them both in your house, and it's not. I have a nightmare story at my house that we had with our flooring, our wood flooring, that same name, same box,
Got fooled.
two different runs, and slightly different widths of the flooring. Like
Striped.
it was a nightmare. It was
Yeah.
a nightmare.
Another statement for repeatability.
Yeah.
How well do we control our process runs? They've got to be duplicated.
Yep.
They've got to be. We have to measure and control and understand what we're doing the same every time.
So, before we move on to the next, into the custom colors, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what are, and I know we've touched on some of it, but are there any market trends in color or textures or finishes that you're finding right now that are super popular?
Super popular. I would say paints remain very, very strong. 70% of the market is paints now, and it used to be 15%.
Wow.
So
We were
the
just heavily
stains-
driven with stains.
All of the stain lines have to cure paint now. So how many of you are dealing with exactly that? We have to
Yep.
cure paint where we just let stain dry for sealer. So that's a big challenge. Paints are huge. Stain is maybe making a little comeback, a little. It's not strong enough for me to call it a trend yet, but there's certainly a lot of restoration wood.
Okay.
The barn wood, reclaimed wood statement is huge. A lot of flooring looks like it came right out of a barn. So there's a lot of that. Lower sheens, lower glosses, the mattes are very, very strong in the industry as a result of that. And it actually has a different feel. It's not as smooth as the high gloss. It's a little felty. The touch of it is different. And in most wood markets, we humans like to touch the wood and feel the character
Right.
of the wood. And the lower matte finishes that have that feel to it has gained a lot of popularity. I would
Yep.
say those are real strong trends.
I know I touched on this earlier. Growing up at a cabinet shop, that was in the '80s and into the '90s. A lot of the RICRA and a lot of the attack on poisonous or cancer-causing finishes, lacquers, and things was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I fully support that. But, one of those that got caught was, and pretty much demonized very quickly, was that Deft lacquer that my dad used constantly. But there was something about that Deft lacquer that was like, if you applied it right and you did your multiple layers, sanded, your light sand in between the layers, and you get, that 4, 5, 6 layers of that Deft lacquer, it was like glass on top of, 3/4 oak cabinets. Talk about, these cabinets would be stained, and then you put that on it. It just made that grain pop. And I did any of the, from what I understand, there's never been anything that glass clear, or it took a long time to get to that technology again, that look.
I think the clarity of the urethanes and the polyesters is there.
Okay. All right.
Is there.
And how long did it take for them to catch up to that?
We wouldn't endorse it in North America. We stayed with the lacquers and the varnishes,
Okay.
and resisted the move to that chemistry. It's been available in Europe for 30 years.
Wow.
We just finally crossed over and decided to add that cost in equipment and engineering to our solutions.
Yeah, look at Europe. Didn't they start the powder coating started up in like the 60s?
Right.
And then, it got here in about the 80s. And they'd already been working on it for 20 years.
We're a little stubborn.
Yeah, we are, for sure. And so, it's always that push. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the custom colors. I got 3 things I want to cover here with you guys before we wrap up, and that's small batches, custom cells, and color change integrity.
Sure.
Let's go.
Okay, so the small batches can be as small as a quart of material, 32 ounces. Can be all they need to do a job. And initially, a lot of sample parts are sent out for sign off by the customer. So what they send as a sample to the customer will be used to compare to the order that comes 2 months later or 2 weeks later, depending on the process time and the lead time promised to the customer. So that kind of ability to move from a small batch to a larger batch and have the exact same result
Right.
is critical. The integrity of the material and the process have to be very sound. And that's every single thing that Air Power offers as a solution
Takes
to
us
manage
right back
that.
to repeatability and
It is
profitability.
It is huge, and you have to be able to get that material supplied, mixed, applied, and cured, scalable.
Yep. Perfect.
Completely scalable. Critical.
All right.
Talking too much.
Custom cells. Want to talk about that?
Go ahead.
You want to? It's all right. It's all right. This happens. It happens. You're our guest. He's with me.
Lenny and I have done this for 20 years together. So
great.
we're partners in crime for a long, long time. So I just feel bad. I can't stop this from happening. It's why I don't chew gum. It's a waste of time. I've got other things to do.
But Lenny and I both know that that's why you're here.
Well, thank you. Custom colors used to be for the custom shops alone, but the larger sellers of cabinetry, furniture, those kind of marketing channels have all increased in their product offering versatility to the point where you can have any color anytime and almost the standard lead time. It's very, very close. So your ability to manage colors that you've never seen before and maintain with a high integrity loyalty to that color is critical. So you're color changing more with smaller batches and you're using material you may have never seen before. Chemistry is the same, but the color's different. The way it looks and appears is different, has to be measured appropriately. So because of custom colors, you're changing more often with smaller batches. It may require a dedicated cell to do so.
Gotcha.
A specialized group of equipment may be required to do that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What is a custom cell? What's the definition of a custom cell?
It's usually still it's manufacturing industrial equipment, but it's scaled down for smaller batches.
Okay.
So where a spray machine may be able to spray 5,000 kitchen cabinets in a shift, this is one that'll do 30 kitchen cabinets in a shift.
Okay. All right.
So it doesn't move as fast. The pace is a little slower, but the efficiencies are optimal.
And are we talking flatline type work where that goes through?
It's possible.
Flatline or where they're
Flatline or hang line
Gotcha.
could possibly
Components or already assembled.
be. Yep.
Sometimes.
Either one.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Either way.
Offline booth.
Very
Yeah.
scalable to what you need.
Yeah.
Significant upcharge for that type of
Big
order
time.
also.
Yeah.
The lead time is still really tight, but you upcharge for those custom colors significantly, and the market will pay you.
Yep.
I want my custom color in 2 weeks, and I'm willing to pay you for it.
Yep.
The customers understand there's a cost for it. They do. But they specify more clearly and more completely what they expect.
So are we talking
Mean
about,
that.
there's websites out there where you can go and you literally handpick everything out or size it up based on what they offer, and you just assign it a color and you hit enter and
Take a picture of your cat and send it in and say, I want this.
In my
Wow.
experience, I
custom
worked for a cabinet manufacturer that Sophia Loren had been to a vineyard and taken a picture of a basket that held a bottle of her favorite wine, and we duplicated her whole closet in the finish that matched that basket.
it's pretty remarkable. Wow, yeah, you weren't kidding. Take a picture of the cat.
Exactly that happens.
Wow.
Exactly that kind of product availability is in the marketplace, and the largest manufacturers now have small cells that are specialty cells for custom colors.
Wow.
All of them.
Wow. All right. That takes us through what we had to cover. You guys want to add anything else? Is there anything you want to cover on this particular topic?
It's been a real honor. I appreciate so much everything that you have done to allow me to run my mouth for all this time and celebrate wood with you. It's a passion of mine that's undisputable, and I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
We actually had a conversation even prior to this getting started with us reaching out to do a podcast, and we talk about a lot of different things on this podcast, and painting, powder coating, assembly, any number of things. And there was a mention about something, talking about wood industry in the market that doesn't come up all the time. And your name popped up like fast. And so we appreciate you coming down to spend time with us and join us on the podcast. Allan,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much. Len,
Thank you, Lenny.
Sir,
it's been real. Glad you joined us.
thank you for having me.
And so, thank you for joining us on this part 2 of a 2-part podcast. If you missed the first one, we talked about substrates and coating technologies. We talked about a lot of different things, applied cost. So you can probably find a link to that below, or go to Air Power Airwaves.com. airpowerlive.com. If you want to listen to it, you can go to airpowerairwaves.com or download this podcast wherever you download your own podcasts. If you have any questions at all for us, feel free to reach out at 1-800-334-1001 or visit the Air Power website at airpower-usa.com. If you want to shop at all, you can't buy Allan or Len, but if you'd like to buy replacement parts or pumps or guns or anything else that you like, spray guns, finishing spray guns, you can go to shop.airpower-usa.com. And thank you for watching and listening. Be sure you like, share, and all those other things. And I want to close this out like I always do by saying thank you to these guys and for you to manufacture it a great day.
Thank you for joining the Air Power Airwaves Podcast. Air Power Airwaves is a production of Air Power Inc. and Air Power Live Studios and is hosted by Travis Steyerwalt. For more information, please visit airpowerairwaves.com. For more information on all of our products, brands, and manufacturing solutions, please visit airpower-usa.com. If you have any questions or need product support, please contact Air Power at 1-800-334-1001.